Hi, I'm Farah Danish. Welcome to my Calm Autism Mom podcast. I'm a certified brain gym movement facilitator, former special educator, and a mindset coach. Through my podcast, I bring together parents, experts from educational, psychology, and medical communities to share innovative insights on parenting and supporting individuals on the spectrum. My mission is simple: to continuously learn and share the latest autism-related news and strategies, bringing you powerful conversations and practical solutions you can use right now. So, if you're an autism mom searching for answers, support, or just some real inspiration, you're in exactly the right place, my friend. Let's transform your autism parenting journey starting right now. Today, I have with me Jonathan Plaza, who's a Board Certified Behavior Analyst with over 16 years of experience in behavior analysis. As the founder of Higher Echelon Behavior, Jonathan provides ABA therapy, behavioral sports psychology, and clinical behavior analysis. He's also the founder of My Behavior Network, an innovative online platform offering ongoing training and professional development for families and clinicians in the space of neurodevelopmental conditions. Their approach is grounded in assent-based therapy and integrative support, with a focus on empowering individuals through skill-based programming. So join me in welcoming Jonathan Plaza. Hi, Jonathan. Thank you so much for being on my show. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on.
Jonathan, you're a BCBA. You have a very extensive, obviously, ABA background. I'll be very honest, ABA has a bad rep with a lot of parents simply because there's this whole idea about how compliance driven this intervention is, and that a child is made to mask through therapy sessions. He's expected to sit still. There's words thrown in like there are consequences and there's reward, there's reinforcement. It is not child focused. It's more about what the therapist or what the system wants out of the child than what the child really needs. Now, what I really admire about what you do is you have introduced movement and sports into your sessions. And I love that you do that because I have a movement background myself. I'm a brain gym movement facilitator. So I understand the importance of movement. Like, how did you think that these two practices should go together? Something which is so uncommon, so unrelatable, but you managed to bring them in your sessions. What was the inspiration behind that?
Well, sports and being active has always been part of my life prior to even working with ABA therapy, right? So I've always been heavily involved in sports and fitness. So when I started working in ABA therapy, I noticed that a lot of times, like you mentioned, I started with also practicing with outdated methodologies that I like to call them nowadays, which is still very focused on compliance. I can say that during my time when I started, the focus was also very much compliant based, following through, right? And things like that. When we placed demands, following through. And ultimately it was just conditions that were very demanding for the learner, right? A lot of tabletop activities. And I felt like just instinctively, I felt like it would be a lot more feasible for the learner to be able to be receptive to some of these lessons if they had an opportunity to just get up and move. And for the sake of regulation, early on, I encountered several cases that, where anxiety was a big role and a lot of self-stimulatory behaviors. And with my background in sports and fitness and meditation, I started to realize, perhaps the regulation effect surrounding exercise of movement could be beneficial for these children as well when we get an opportunity to work with them. So I started to incorporate the two, just being able to get up off the table a little bit, practice in the natural environment. And this is early on in my career, I guess you can say, right? Very early on in my career, before I even knew what I was doing. I was just still incorporating, like, catching the ball and running and things of that nature in very structured breaks. And then I would see how well the children would respond to that. So, I felt like I was doing something right, just based on what I was seeing in front of me. Then later on, obviously, as I had the opportunity to collaborate with different professionals in physical therapy and OT, and functional neurology. And I started to realize why all of that was working, right? I started to learn why all of that was working in terms of like regulation and motor planning. And you see all the other benefits that are surrounding that perhaps I didn't know at the time. So nowadays, and with my current therapy, I try to just make it where I use movement and exercise and sports to facilitate all of the lessons that I'm trying to teach for the most part.
And can you elaborate a little bit about structured breaks? Because there are a lot of mothers who go into, when they find out that their child's on the spectrum, they become RBTs. And this concept of like structured breaks and then including movement, can you give us an example of what that can look like?
Sure. So in my current sessions, I like to always create structured breaks where the child has the opportunity to engage in the activities that he enjoys to engage in, whether that could even be, self-stimulatory behaviors where they like to pace and run and perhaps engage in what, some may consider elopement behavior, right? But these are sometimes sensory driven behaviors. And when you have a dynamic where you're working on skill based, or you're in the skill based part of your lesson, and these movement breaks are not being accounted for, then I feel like that affects the child's willingness to participate willingly as a voluntary participant, right? And then you start to see a lot more escape behavior, right? Because everything starts to become a lot more aversive for the individual, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I feel for the sake of maintaining that individual's motivation and attention, it's important for me to just set structured breaks where, let's say, we're going to work for a certain interval that is not too long, and then allow the learner to go out and move and play and do the things that he enjoys to do. And I feel like when we do that repetitively, the learner starts to pick up on that dynamic, and that dynamic also generates trust, right? Because he feels or she feels like we're not going to sit indefinitely to work without knowing when this is going to end. Instead, I make it very predictable, and they know that I'm willing to do for him some because he also allows me to do what I enjoy doing, right? And they start to pick up on that dynamic.
So you work on like this whole give and take. And it's so interesting when you say that because, when we neurotypical adults work, for me at least, my reward is like, okay, I'm going to finish through with this and then I'm going to go get myself a cup of coffee. That's like, you can call it a self-stimulatory behavior or whatever it is. I need it to keep going. And that's what
Right.
kids need. So I love that you're able to create this non-threatening environment for them. So you get their buy-in this way.
Right. Essentially, it's a sensory break, right?
Yeah.
And when you work closely with OTs, you get the opportunity to realize the role that sensory integration plays in behavior and regulation, things of that nature, right? So you start to realize what are specific activities and exercises that produce uh, perhaps a regulation effect on a child, and then you start to incorporate those into your movement breaks, right? Just to increase the likelihood of attention and just focus and engagement, right? So that comes with being able to collaborate with different disciplines.
That's amazing. And another thing that I've seen in one of your reels is meditation. That is just beautiful. And I know personally from my own experience that it has done wonders for Suleiman. But I know it's not something that you can just introduce and expect the child to understand
Of
that,
course.
okay, I'm supposed to sit still and enjoy this. This is a therapeutic experience. They don't get that. So how did you think of bringing meditation into this mix? I mean, you've got this beautiful concoction of things going on in your therapy session. It's wonderful. How did you think of infusing meditation into this?
Sure. I mean, um, with early on, especially early on, I used to have treatment plans that were assigned to me by BCBAs, and they would include like motor imitation, where we have to engage in like some type of lesson where the individual is able to imitate the motor actions that I do. And these were lessons that were typically taking place at the table. So the child's at the other end of the table, and I say, "Hey, do this like this," right? And the child is to clap his hands, and we're ultimately sitting at the table, and I'm placing a demand, and he's to basically model it. And then I started to realize, later on, that we can do motor imitation outside of the table with exercise, with movement, and with meditation. Like, I know initially meditation is not going to be meaningful for the learner, but at the time I was working with, at the time and then throughout my career, I've worked with several cases with severe behavior, severe aggression, self-injury, property destruction, where teaching regulation and coping skills is important, right? But these coping skills, like meditation, like deep breathing, like progressive relaxation techniques, to a learner early on is not going to be significant. It's going to be presented as a task, as more effort, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it was, you know, I wanted to incorporate that for my learners that were engaging in severe behavior and so that they can reap the benefits of meditation and regulation. But I had to first make it significant for them. I had to make sure that first that there was a meaning to doing deep breathing. And for that, I had to introduce it within play. I had to introduce it within the things that they enjoy doing. And that way they started to realize or be receptive to that dynamic of I do deep breathing, this results in preferred activities, running, play, and we do that enough, then I increase the likelihood of their engagement in these meditation type of strategies and positions, or what do you call it? Yeah, like the routine, the meditation routine. And once they're involved with it, then you start to see, the benefits of it, right? But for me, it is all about trying to get their buy-in, right? Get their buy-in and bring significance to that type of an activity.
So introduce it, just so that I understand this correctly, you introduce it in a way that they understand the significance of it, of why they're doing it, and then slowly they start enjoying the whole process of, deep breathing. And so you get their buy-in that way, right?
Yes. So what for them, what for a lot of learners, what is significant is their preferred activities or reinforcers, right? Whether it's a tablet, whether it's a preferred toy or tangible, or a preferred activity, let's say, for example, jumping or jumping on the trampoline.
Right.
So these things have a reinforcement history with the learner. They enjoy these things. These are the preferred things that they like to do. So that activity is meaningful for them. If I want to teach the learner something that is not meaningful or they don't have a history with, like meditation, for example, I have to bring that novel lesson and associate it with what is meaningful for him, the tablet, the jumping, the running, right? And if I create that relation,
Yeah,
we do some
pairing
of
that.
this,
Yeah.
right? We do some of this, that equals the stuff that you enjoy, then their participation in these novel activities can increase. And that's basically what we need is their willing participation in these novel activities and do it enough as to where they can ultimately start reaping the benefits of participating in that type of an activity like meditation. Right.
Have you seen the benefits yourself? Like, I mean, how has it helped them?
For sure. I think it's definitely a process. So most recently I had one case with a lot of aggression, a lot of aggression and self-injury. And these were usually, instances and they were usually triggered by denial, like being denied access to things that he enjoys or wanting to do. Like so if you deny access to his tablet or deny him access to an activity that he wants to engage in, he wouldn't be able to tolerate well not being allowed to do the things he wants to do. So it would result in aggression or self-injury. So for me, when I first started on this case and I assessed, the behaviors and I started brainstorming as where I wanted to go with this case, the first thing that came to mind was I need to teach the child eventually regulation, self-regulation, right? And be able to incorporate meditation and deep breathing and just being able to have a calm body prior to him responding to some of these triggers. Um, so for me, it was okay during the times where he is most calm and when we're engaging in his preferred activities is when I'm going to start introducing some of like the deep breathing, the body scans, the progressive relaxation. And with that particular case, it was funny because I actually made a video about it. And it was we were having a session and we were playing catch, so I started progressively putting him in a situation that I knew was going to trigger the early signs of aggression for him where whining, his facial features
Yeah,
would change a little bit so I can tell
you
he was
could see
going
the
to
signs.
snowball into aggression, right? So I started to progressively put him in situations where I knew it was going to generate discomfort, but never to the point where I would overwhelm him.
Mm,
And then at that point in time, I would step in with some self-regulation techniques or self-regulation strategies that we have worked on before during the fun times
yeah.
of our session. And then with repeated sessions, we started to realize that during the early signs of distress, when his facial features would change a little bit, or his tone, or he would start to whine, that he would start to apply some of these strategies that we were using during the reinforcement sessions or the reinforcement breaks that we would do before. And it almost resulted now in a situation where when he catches himself starting to get very upset, now he's very receptive to mom or myself saying, "Hey, remember what we do when we feel upset? We take a deep breath." And now he's receptive to that, as to where before, when he was very, very upset, there was no way to get him to do any type of deep breathing or follow any type of instruction. On the contrary, that would make things even worse. So
Exactly.
now he's actually receptive to these type of strategies, and he's likely to engage in them when he needs to the most, during times of distress.
And there you have it, amazing parents. Part 1 just revealed the game changing secret of meditation for self regulation, a tool that can literally transform how our kids navigate their world. But we're just getting started. Coming up in Part 2, we're diving deep into elopement, why it happens, what triggers it, and most importantly, Jonathan will be sharing with you practical strategies you can start using today while you're waiting for professional support. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's going to be coming up next.